That's what I'm concerned about, the fucking bloopers.
I hope these bloopers, the interview could be whatever, but that blooper reel.
My grade is gonna be predicated on that last segment, that it was just gonna be bloopers. Oh man, she was the only person that included bloopers. That's extra credit. Okay, I'm not close enough. Hello. You don't look like an anti-racism activist today.
No?
No.
How did I look like an anti-racist?
No, raises.
Oh, yeah. It's getting there again.
You couldn't even see your mouth.
Yeah, it was anti-racist.
Okay.
I forgot about that. That was a good blooper reel. I'm gonna have to talk very.
No, keep doing that. We'll get more bloopers.
My brain is shot right now.
Really?
Yeah, my voice is going out again.
Well, what the hell?
We can do it.
Okay. Let's see. Did I start with where you were born and raised in?
I don't remember.
Okay. I think that's a good place to start anyway. Unless you want to like introduce yourself. Do you think it sounds, or if I introduce you or ask you to introduce yourself? Or should I just like have a little caption? Mustafa Popal.
Oh, I mean, that's your artistic license. Right?
Yeah.
You're packaging a video with content.
Yeah, I just don't really, I don't want it to seem formal, and that's why I think like an introduction is too formal.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just start with a question.
Start with a question.
Okay. All right. So tell me about where you were born and raised.
I was born in Afghanistan. I won't say the date.
No, say the day. Your birthday is this month, right?
It is. It is. I was born in December of 1979, and in Afghanistan, Kabul, Afghanistan. And a few months later, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and we left Afghanistan and bounced around a little bit for a couple of years, almost 2 years in Germany, and then my conscious formative years, I grew up in Concord, California, which was interesting, I guess.
What was interesting about it?
It's your typical suburb where culture goes to die.
Goes to die. So it wasn't very
strip malls
culturally-
and mall. Just like on a pure external, if you look around, it's ethnically diverse. You have Middle Eastern people, Latino people, African-American, white, the whole nine. But it's the suburbs. The suburbs have the structure of a suburb is a conformist kind of reality. So it's cool. It's interesting.
But at home, you had a lot of culture.
At home, particularly when we first moved here, my parents, being that they just came here, their entire identity was invested in being Afghan because they grew up. They didn't know American culture, United States. The home was the space where they got to protect what they knew. I mean, because I imagine having immigrated with them but not being conscious of the immigration process and not having formed identity fully yet, it's probably a pretty shocking experience that you're going from the space and place that you grew up, that shaped who you are and shaped how you understand the world. And that understanding was reinforced because that understanding was created to exist in that space. Now you're coming to a new place with your understanding of this new space, and it doesn't probably quite fit. Mm-hmm. And there's probably a massive culture shock. There was a massive culture shock, and the home was a space where they got to protect that understanding, that perspective, that identity. And I was kind of the battlegrounds of them protecting their identity through me by experiencing American society and whatnot. So at home was culturally, it was very steeped in Afghan culture, militantly steeped in Afghan culture in the sense that they wanted to make sure I understood I was Afghan and this is what Afghans do and whatnot, because it was through me that they were going to protect their identity.
Did
So,
they tell you about the culture shock at all? Like when you grew up, did they express to you?
no, I don't know. Because I don't know to what extent someone is conscious of that shock, right? They're feeling it. They're aware this is weird, this is different. They're going through it, but to what extent can people sit back and go, what I'm experiencing is culture shock because I have this culture and there's this culture, and that level of critique, is that the word I'm looking for right now? I don't know.
Self-awareness?
Self-awareness, there you go. Right, to be able to interrogate your own experience and ideas and understand why you're thinking or feeling something. I don't know how many people actually do that. But I'd like to think a lot of people do, but to what level, to what extent? So, were they feeling the culture shock? Yes. To what extent or to what depth did they understand what they're experiencing? I don't know. I can only say from my own experience that they were really concerned about making sure that I maintained and kept Afghan culture.
Did that change at all as you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, at home I couldn't, when I was growing up, I couldn't speak anything but Dari or Farsi at home. And so at home it was it. I couldn't speak any English, I'd get in trouble and whatnot. Even though we would watch American programming, things like that, when I communicated with my parents, it had to be Farsi. And that was true until I went to college. And then my brother, who's 8 years younger than me, he was growing up, and with him, they were a little different. They were a little bit easier on imposing or passing on Afghan culture. And I think, I don't know this to be true, it's because they had, by the time my brother was coming of age, they themselves had found comfort in America. They had engaged in the process of Americanization. So, as they came to terms and understood American culture and adopted elements of it, they were then less militant in maintaining every little aspect of Afghan culture embedded in my brother. Though, funny thing is he's vastly more Afghan, if you will, in expression than I am.
How so?
He still loves to cook Afghan food. He loves to listen to Afghan music. So in those various ways, he's maintained a lot. Where I don't know how to cook. I love to eat Afghan food, but I'm not rushing to go to concerts with my parents. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to this concert, this Afghan concert with my parents," and they love it. He's the golden child of the first black sheep.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know.
So the experience I grew up here, and that experience has been interesting. Now at home, when I go to visit my parents, I mean, I hear my mom say one sentence, and that sentence is split into two different languages, which demonstrates her own level of acculturation in American society, which is different than what I experienced with them.
What about making friends when you were like a child versus now? Was it more, did you lean more towards Afghan social circles when you were younger?
Yeah, and that's partially because the family is so big that you had a built-in
Friend circle.
social network. It was your cousins and whatnot, and then people my parents knew from Afghanistan who moved to Concord as well. You know, my mom's homie moved here, and they have kids, so boom, you got homies there. You got homies because you have 800 cousins, right? You go by numbers. There's 800, 750s here, yeah, right? There's just a lot of cousins, so you got a built-in network of friends. And then anytime I did try to express as a young kid, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with the neighbor. Oh, my parents were, again, because I think they feared that I would adopt too rapidly American norms, they wouldn't really often let me go hang out with the neighborhood kids, if you will.
When did that start to change?
A little bit in high school, but not too much. I played on several traveling soccer teams, so you can't control that, right? I played high school soccer, so with hanging out with them was cool. Playing soccer with them, clearly I had to, right? Because I was playing soccer, so that it eased up a little bit. But anytime I was going, oh, I want to go kick it with so and so, who's that? Did they play soccer with you? If it wasn't, then I'd have to hear an earful of like, why they don't think that's cool. And in college, I mean, they can't. I moved away. I made friends. They had to deal with it. Came back, and again, by the time I came back from college, they themselves became a little bit more comfortable being in America. They had adjusted to being in America and whatnot. And so now now because I'm an old man with a gray beard, they can tell me who I can and can't hang out with.
Yes, they can.
They could, you're right. They could, it just, I wouldn't have to listen to them hopefully
Yeah.
at this point. But yeah, now they themselves have, grown accustomed to being here and they themselves have broadened their networks to have people beyond simply the family as someone they include as friends. So as they've changed, their perceptions of what I can and can't or should or shouldn't do has evolved and changed.
Do you feel that the transition from primarily Afghan social circles to more diverse social circles had an effect on your identity, your personal identity?
I mean, I think the answer is yes. Understanding, because of the changes happening,
Yeah.
right? How it affected it, that's the question. I don't know. I think I've always engaged in life as an ambassador. I was always bouncing around with different circles of friends, even in high school, even though I may have not hung out with people outside of school that often.
Mm-hmm.
On campus, I was always hanging out with different groups of people. To the extent that it changed my identity, I don't know if there's any perceived, like, I can say, hey, this is a demonstrative of this shift from how I was when I was hanging out with simply Afghan people and how it changed. In fact, I think to the extent that it's impacted my relationships with people that are not Afghan, is I brought my Afghanness, if you will, and injected that into spaces that didn't have that, right? Like, so just the general energy, the type A personality, the loud nature of being Middle Eastern.
The reason I don't need a mic for this interview.
Exactly. And this is a burnt voice right now. I brought that with me to those spaces, and it's like a shock. Often, like, wow, this guy is loud and has lots of energy. And I'm not shy in critiquing mainstream American culture in being highly, I think, hyper-individualized, living in an Afghan family, being taught that you yourself have a responsibility beyond yourself. The world doesn't simply exist. It's not your oyster to simply take as you please, that you play a critical role in shaping and impacting your community, that you then have a responsibility beyond just your own personal desires. That to me is arguably the biggest lesson, and the thing that I most revere about Afghan culture is the selflessness that's part of Afghan culture. So I try to bring that with me into the larger American context, is trying to break through that individualism. And I'm not knocking individualism, because I think Afghan culture to the extreme is completely lose yourself in the community, where in American culture is you lose the community for yourself. I feel like the beauty of being bicultural and being bicultural of East and West is the ability to fall back on one identity to critique one, and then falling on the other identity to critique the other, to find some sort of, if there's such a thing, a balance. And so I guess I could say that's had an impact. Actually, that's probably had an impact of taking American values of the notion of the self and bringing that to the family. It's like, hey, pump your brakes. I have some desires. So actually, now that we're talking about it, I've brought some of the core elements of American culture into my own house. And be like, look, don't tell my brother, when I'm talking to my parent, he has these desires and wants these things. We should be supportive of those desires and whatnot. So maybe there's a balance that's been struck. And I'll pause for a moment.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. So distracting. Okay. Yeah, this interview is going way different. I haven't even asked any of the questions that I asked you last time. It's good though.
Pop, don't leave the door open.
I'm just coming back when I was closing it, I think.
You want to just tell them we're doing an interview? Yeah.
I've been falling asleep like at 9, 10 o'clock every night because it's so dark so early.
Yeah.
That by like after 6, 7 hours of darkness, I'm like, okay, it's time for bed. Okay, what should I ask you next? When was the last time you talked to me? Oh, balance between
competing cultures, implicitly suggesting that there's a competition between East and West.
Okay. Alright, let's see. I think I asked you this one last time. Okay. Would you say that your experience is similar to the melting pot theory or the salad bowl theory?
I think it's definitely I'd like to think it's the salad bowl. Just picking up where I kind of left off is this kind of me personally balancing the values of Afghan culture and the values of American culture. That to me is that's the salad, right? That it maintains the integrity of each ingredient, but it's brought together as a whole. I'd like to think if my parents were sitting here, they might be giving different answers about me.
So
but
don't send them this interview.
That I think I'd like to think that if you were to ask me what are elements of Afghan culture that I value the most, it's hospitality, selflessness, humor, and these are just, and I think I carry those with me within the larger American context. So I like to think it's the salad bowl. I don't think I've lost the Afghan culture in what is American culture. I've tried to find a way to accommodate the features of both those cultures the best way I see fit. So yeah, I think the salad. I like to think I'm the carrot in the salad.
The carrot?
Yeah,
Why?
because I like carrots.
So you seem to have a really easy time articulating the characteristics of yours that come directly from your Afghan heritage. Can you pinpoint what's American about your character?
I think that the value of allowing someone the space and freedom to think about what they desire and what they hope for and how they want to articulate and express themselves, I think is more of an American concept, right? Like the notion of the self and what does that mean? Or what's my desire? That stuff I think is what I take from American culture, and then on a more of a social political identity, I think the notion's a democratic notion, right? Which I think aligns with that idea of you get to choose kind of idea. That there's with that everything that I might think, it's okay for someone not to be that, right? To have that acceptance of somebody else based on how they choose to express and be. I think that's more of an American thing than it is an Afghan thing, especially when the idea of this self loses itself in the context of the community. That's Afghan culture, right?
Yeah.
Well, then there is no choice but conformity to the whole, right? Well, that does, you being yourself can't really exist within in that kind of mindset. So I think that aspect is core to who I am, is the belief that I don't have to agree with you, but I accept your existence. And in fact, when I come across someone I don't agree, that excites me. I want to engage in a discourse with that person. That desire of discourse, though, is more Afghan, unfortunately, than I believe is American. Even though in America we believe in democracy, I don't believe we have a discourse. We don't have healthy discourse in this country. That I learned from watching my family parties, watching the men go off to a corner and solve all the world's problems, and seeing them go back and forth in talking about these issues and disagreeing with one another, passionately disagreeing.
Yeah.
But
respectively.
well, yeah, you don't think any less of that person. You have to be passionate about what you believe and express that. But there's a level of discourse that takes place, and a desire to speak on such matters, that's Afghan rather than American. Though I think that should actually be more American. If we believe we're a democracy, well then we have to know how to talk to each other. But that doesn't quite exist within the American context. So I see elements of Afghan and elements of being American within me, and then I see, because of my being able to go into these other cultures, things that I believe we could take from here and bring here, and things we can take from here to bring there. And that's why I think hyphenated Americans, and this might be a statement of bias, we are the people. We, I believe, can be the torchbearers of understanding how to resolve intercultural conflict. Because those that are monocultural don't have the framework to understand why someone may act or behave or think in a different way. But us, as the bicultural people who have one foot in one identity and one foot in the other identity, are uniquely situated to understand why people might feel this or feel that. And I think we play, whether we accept that responsibility or not, I think it is our responsibility to be the ones that bridge that conflict and engage in a level of discourse with both groups, to be like, why are you, here's why they feel that. Think about why do you feel your way? They're feeling the sources of your identity are rooted in the same things. You just have to express it differently. So let's try to understand ourselves on a human level, that we all need these things, this identity, this meaning and whatnot. It's just the context of your identity and the context of this identity were different, but we all need the same thing, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. And if we begin to go from that space, I think we can resolve a lot of the conflicts that exist. That's why I identify with the salad bowl.
Yeah.
So we can communicate with the other ingredients in the bowl, if I'm now properly using the metaphor here, so that it tastes so good.
Yeah, and you can add whatever you want to the salad.
Right? Yeah. And not subtract. Let's not subtract.
Yeah, you don't have to take it.
We don't have to take anything out. We don't have to build walls in the salad bowl.
The dressing ties it all together.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the dressing then? The healthy discourse, maybe?
Maybe, the healthy discourse.
Do you think, the inability for a lot of people in America to have healthy discourse is due to the fact that there's this pressure to conform to the status quo, as opposed to bring elements of your own cultural identity or things that might be different about you into the status quo, that instead you actually have to sacrifice elements of yourself?
Yeah, I think that there's this, all systems necessitate some level of conformity. I think whatever that reason is for that conformity, we've built in through culture, in American culture, ways to eliminate the discourse. for instance, you're told at the dinner table not the subjects that are off the table at the dinner table is don't talk about politics, religion, and sex, right? You go to a party, they say don't talk about politics or religion, but maybe try to have some sex, right?
Yeah.
So but what essentially happens is that in the spaces where we share time with other people, right? We are told culturally, in American culture, that you should not talk about anything, any element that I believe is our shared experience, right?
Yeah.
The political, social, religious kind of things that are going on, don't talk about it. Well, if from a young age, you don't see that behavior of discourse modeled, you'll never develop, well, you'll never develop, but it's harder to develop constructive ways of engaging discourse. So how are we then, when the culture of democracy is not in the culture of America, how do we engage in the democratic process? And what we've done is we've changed democracy into a Scantron exam. You don't get to choose the questions, you don't get to choose the answers. Your job is just to select the answers that have been preloaded for you and the questions that have been preloaded to you. So we just go to a booth, circle a couple of things, and that's it. And we think we've engaged in a democracy. That is part of a democracy. That's not the full process of democracy. And the oil that makes the whole process of democracy function is discourse. And we don't teach that. Even look at the classrooms we have. The seats are these straight rows. Everyone is isolated from everyone else, and their job is to listen just to the person standing up at the front. To the extent that even some faculty try to engage in discussion, guess what? Students have a hard time actually knowing what is the proper way to process a question. How do you engage? How do you participate? It is not a natural behavior in the classroom. It's not a natural behavior in our families. It's not a natural behavior in our social settings. And so what you have is an entire society void of the skill of engaging in discourse. And that's how you get the lack of discourse when you do have the candidates, like when Hillary and Trump were speaking. How were they speaking to each other? What level of sophistication were they engaging into the discussions of policy? There was none. Why? Because we don't demand that of them, and they don't have to go there. All of that is the product and result of the lack of having a culture that emphasizes discourse and discussion. And that's why I learned that, to the extent that I learned that watching family parties, watching people go back and forth. And then when I would go have dinner in a non-Afghan house, I'd bring these things up and it'd be like, why are you talking about this stuff, right? And that's scary.
Yeah.
To be given the power to shape, but not know that we don't fully understand how to utilize that power, that's dangerous.
Do you think it's intentional? Like systematically?
Yeah, I think yes, I think it is absolutely intentional to have a citizenry that is under to misinformed and then don't have the skills to engage in critical thinking, to ask the necessary questions of the system, to make the necessary changes that we desire. And so when the discourse is superficial, the demands are superficial, that is less taxing on the system, and the system doesn't have to change. There's people that literally profit from us not being able to articulate and question the system and why we have these problems that we have economically, socially, and politically.
As a professor, then, what would you like to see change in the educational system so that students in particular are not so reliant on getting all of their information from a professor, so that they can successfully articulate their thoughts and critiques and have respectful discourse with one another, and then take that to the real world experience?
Well, I think if you talk to almost any instructor, they'll probably, if you talk to them, what's the purpose of education, critical thinking, why critical thinking, so that they better understand the world and they make changes. I think you would hear almost the exact same thing from every single instructor. The question, which is essentially underlying thing, is we want to disrupt the status quo. We want to disrupt how the natural order of things. We want to make sure that students are empowered to be able to question the society that they live in so that they can make the changes. What does that mean? Well, you are empowering people to say, I don't accept things as they are. I think I'm safe in saying that most teachers want to do that. Well, if most teachers want to do that, we have to disrupt the natural order of things on campus.
Yes.
Right? We can't expect that the 20th century models that we implement today in educating are going to best prepare our students to exist in a 21st century society. And so we have to do a lot of soul searching and think about what are the changes we have to make institutionally, like the structure of this institutions. What kind of changes do we have to make curricularly? What do we teach people? And what kind of changes do we have to make pedagogically? How we teach people. So that's a difficult process, especially when you've gone through your own life and getting educated in a certain way. That's how you're going to educate, right? And it's not an easy thing to say, maybe I need to change.
Yeah.
Right? No one wants to say that. Though I think we are in the business of helping people learn the skills to say, hey, I need to make changes. Well, that's what we're trying to teach students. We have to be able to do that for ourselves as well. So without going into detail of here's what my personal view of the changes in education that need to take place, specific ideas, I think fundamentally the first thing that needs to change is recognition that we ourselves need to change as an institution to better fit the realities, to better influence, probably is the better word, the realities in the 21st century. But that's not an easy thing. What I would like to, in the most general sense, what I would like to see institutions of higher learning do is recognize that we are a learning organization, which means everyone in this organization has a responsibility to learn. The teachers need to learn, administrators need to learn, staff need to learn, students need to learn. If you ask a teacher, they say, well, we do that. We have professional development. We have to do 25 hours. But I think it's more than that we have to begin to say, we don't know.
Yeah.
What we know is we know how to learn, but we don't have all the answers. And we need to engage in the process of saying, I don't know. Just as we were students and we were doing research. Here's a question I have. I don't know the answer,
Yeah.
but let's go out and get that answer. And as we say, I think as we say it out loud and as we say it in front of our students, I don't know. And holding ourselves and our students accountable to that learning process, that to me, that's the word of power have. Because once that humbles us, hopefully not too many teachers see this, when our degrees give us overconfidence. We get cocky. Well, I've got the degree, I know.
Yeah.
Our degrees, the only thing they've conferred upon us is that we know how to know. Not that we know how to know. In other words, we have the skills to learn. So let's learn. Say, I don't know. Students ask me questions sometimes like, I don't know. Extra credit if you'll find out for us, because I don't know. And I see the shock when I say that to students and they look at me and they go, what? Sometimes they lose respect. Like, how can you not know? Because guess what? In their minds, I'm supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think I need to know everything. I can't know everything. I'd love to know everything, but I don't. I want to learn. I want students to want to learn, and I want to learn with students, and I want the students to teach me, and I want to teach the students. So to me, that's the fundamental change. How do you create discourse? Is you have to reinvigorate curiosity and understand none of us know, but let's try to get to that place of knowing together. I think that's what a democracy is supposed to be. Curiosity and discourse are the two things you need in democracy.
And teaching each other.
Yeah, because that's the discourse.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, your perspective, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Until we talked about it, I had my feelings and my thoughts and whatever. And then you said, I don't agree. And I asked you why, what's your thoughts? Why do you feel that? That process of discourse not only opens me up to a different way of thinking, it opens me up to a different way of living. Their experience is not my experience. Well, I didn't know you went through that, which led you to think and feel this and believe this thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think, yeah.
That's awesome.
So these spaces, this institutions of higher learning to me are laboratories. We're supposed to experiment. We're supposed to fail. The teachers are supposed to fail. The students are supposed to fail. But instead, we've created institutions that reify certainty.
Mm-hmm.
The students feel like they can't fail. Teachers have to pretend like they know everything because they can't fail. I want everyone to fail. I failed. I've recognized what classes I failed in. Mm-hmm. And I have to take responsibility over that failing. And it's frustrating and it's whatnot, but now I have something to work with. Okay, what can I do differently or change or whatnot? So maybe I would add the other thing we need to do is eliminate that fear of failing. We need to fail. I don't know, the biggest life lessons I've learned is by falling on my face. And then I got up, dusted myself off and said, don't do that again because that hurts.
Yeah.
And so maybe curiosity, discourse, and feeling okay that we can fail, and those are the ingredients of a healthy democratic society.
Today I was actually talking to a student in our class, whose name I won't say, but he was complaining about a teacher and saying, so-and-so is not a good teacher. And I asked him, like, okay, well, what makes them not a good teacher? And his response was, well, he doesn't tell us exactly what he wants. Instead, he forces us to critically think our way to the answer. And I was like, that sounds like a great teacher.
Sounds like an amazing teacher.
And he was like, no. He's like an onion. There's too many layers, and every time you peel one back, there's another one. I just want an orange. I just have to peel one layer. And I was like, dude, you should be grateful. You have a good teacher there. And I think it's really sad that this is not the first time I've heard it, that a teacher's not a good teacher because they're not simply handing you a silver platter with all the answers on it, that instead, they're handing you an onion. And you have to peel back every single layer, and every layer you peel back lets you know that something you were doing was right, but also wrong, and that you have to continuously learn that there's not only one way to learn how to do something. And I think that can be applied, right, to democracy in general. Like, we're doing this thing and it's working, but if we peel back this other layer, we can find out other ways to do the thing, or different ways to do the thing, or add a step or something like that. Add something to the salad, right?
Onions now.
Yeah, onions. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Afghans love onions in salad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had Afghan
Yeah,
salad.
Afghan salad's dope. It's onions, tomatoes, diced up. It's all diced up. I'm bad with food. Other stuff.
Onions and tomatoes. That could be pico de gallo, though.
It's similar.
Oh, really?
Similar, yeah. But it's got a little bit of spice sometimes, depending on who's making it. I dig it.
I think there's an Afghan dish I really like with green onions. I think it's called bolani. It's kind of like a bread, and inside there's like onions, right? Oh my gosh.
There's different ways of making it, but yeah.
Oh, it's so good, and you dip it in yogurt.
Or chutney.
I don't think I've ever had chutney. Is that the
green
red sauce?
The green sauce. Well, there could be red sauce too.
Oh,
Like Afghans do green sauce and no yogurt sauce. Those are the mainstays of doing your bolani. My brother used to make it and sell them at clubs, like Mighty.
Oh, that's
He'd be right outside of it, and like he'd talk to the public works. It was fun. It was cool. I go to these places to go dance, and then I get some Afghan food. I'm like, yo.
In Sweden, I went to like a 25th birthday party, and they do it like super big. It's not like what we do where we like go to a club or have a house party. Like they rent out a hall and have like assigned seating, and there's like a booklet on where every seat is, and like every now and then someone will get up and suggest a song, and you go to that page, and like everybody sings along, and there's like this nice dinner, and like lots and lots and lots of shots, and it's like rude to deny the shots. Everyone was telling me this, like you cannot say no to the shots, like that is not cool. But one of the things I thought was really awesome was like at like 1 a.m. when everybody's like obviously drunk from not denying any of the shots, they bring out hot dogs for everyone. Like it's like snack time at 1 a.m. It's like, all right, everybody, snack time, because they know everyone's going to be driving home soon. And I was like, why don't we do that? That's amazing.
It is amazing. I'm hungry. Not hot dogs.
You don't like dogs?
Well, the ones outside the club at
the dirty dogs.
The dirty dogs,
Yeah.
those hit the spot, but not just the regular hot dog.
Oh,
I need the bacon wrapped ones,
and the onions.
the onions, the whole nine.
I haven't asked the hip hop question. All right. Let's see. Is that okay? If I ask a question?
Ask whatever question you want. What question?
I was gonna ask you about hip hop. I know I asked you last time, but I don't want you to feel like you're saying something.
No, you speak.
Okay. All right. So I know that hip hop played a big role for you growing up, and I want to know how it impacted the way that you think and feel about things like diversity, oppression, culture, politics.
Yeah. So hip hop, because of going back to the very beginning, let's see, when you're talking about
Concord, California.
Concord, C-Town. No, talking about when I was talking about how my parents were really making sure that I stayed Afghan. The first thing that ever made me feel American was loving hip hop, and just there's something about just the beat. The angst. Thinking back, I was talking to a friend recently, and just hearing people talk about classic hip hop and talking about how these albums like are still 20, 30 years later, like, oh, dude, that album, that was epic.
Yeah.
This was 18-year-olds making music that forever changed music. Which is, I think you get that quality in hip hop. There's a youthfulness always in hip hop. So I was young, growing in my formative age and whatnot, and came across hip hop, and it just captured my attention. Especially in the 90s, the hip hop there, it was like it was a nod, the samplings or nods to soul and jazz and funk. So there was this, there's something referential, but still always fresh, that beat, that driving beat. And it just captured my energy, and I was sold. I was like, oh wow, this was the first thing that made me connect with America, right? And then we start listening to the music, and they're talking about, and not to be a hip hop purist, but I'm going to be a hip hop purist for a minute. They used to talk about some real stuff, right? Before things were getting hot in here, and everyone needed to take off their clothes.
Well, like what?
When they talk, it was to me, it was street reporting. I mean, you can't tell me otherwise. Even the songs to this day that people that never grew up in that era, when they reference 90s hip hop and talk about specific songs, what do those songs have in common? They were talking about life in America as young black and brown folks. And so I was getting a glimpse into an America that I didn't have access to growing up in Concord.
Yeah.
Right? And it was intriguing. I'm like, wow, this is what's going on in America. The media and television shows were presenting a different America than I was hearing through this music. So it was politicizing me in a way that nothing else was in American culture, right? Shows like Home Improvement wasn't letting me know that there's struggle in America, right? I watched it.
Yeah.
Right, I watched all that stuff, but it was showing me the rosy side of, middle class America, right? To the extent that there was something that was breaking that mold, it was Roseanne. Here's white middle class culture, right? To the extent that there was people of color on television shows, family Matters or whatever. Steve Urkel, I forget the show.
Oh, okay, I forgot what it's called too.
Family Matters.
Fresh Prince, right?
Yeah, and so what is it? An inner city kid goes to a rich black family.
Oh, yeah.
The Steve Urkel, what is it? Middle class black family, right? There's this the selling of everyone's in the same. We're maybe different, but we're the same, right? The hip hop wasn't telling me that. They're like, no, there's this. Here's what's going on in my life. There's drug deals. There's people getting shot, right? There's, and then poverty. All of this is being told. I'm like, where is this in anything that I'm learning in class? Where is this in anything that I'm seeing in culture? So the first thing that connected me to America was also the first thing that was exposing me to the complexities of the American experience. So I would argue that hip hop had a profound effect of, one, making me feel American, but then two, letting me see the underbelly of America in a way that nothing else in American culture was. So I think it situated me, along with other factors, but specifically talking about hip hop here, that it specifically situated me in being more, if you will, left in the political spectrum of things. Because everything else was trying to deny this other reality, and they were telling me not to take my eye off that reality. And so it caused me to question American culture in ways that nothing else in American society was making me do it. So I think it played a profoundly important role in that way. Then seeing how hip hop changed in the 90s, by the middle and late 90s, hip hop was pop. It was talking about, buying. It became materialistic.
Superficial.
Super superficial.
Yeah.
And
derogatory.
Yeah, but that's the complexity of hip hop, that even in its heyday was still misogynistic and whatnot. I don't want to deny that there was this perfect hip hop and then it went somewhere awry. Having young 18-year-old men, they're going to talk about objectification of women, and that's going to be there, right?
But it's become glamorized.
Exactly, that's the thing. And so that, I was like, whoa, what happened to the hip hop that I love?
Yeah.
That made me feel connected to America. So the moment I asked the question, why has hip hop changed? It forced me to look at history. So hip hop had, I think, a profound effect on me becoming. That's one important piece of what made me a reflective human being. In the moment you're reflective, you're looking back at history, interrogating history to understand why you are experiencing what you're experiencing in the moment. And so hip hop played a critical role in me coming to love history. What I came to understand about hip hop, what happened to hip hop, is a microcosm of American capitalistic structure. The moment art exists, capitalism tries to find a way to exploit it for profit. And so you begin to restrict and minimize the variety of hip hop. Because hip hop there was different kinds in different expressions. People that were hip hop didn't all dress the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was the commercialization of hip hop that necessitated the creation of an image that is hip hop, because that becomes way easier to sell a image of something than multiple different things. And so, hip hop politicized me from a very young age, and then seeing the change in hip hop itself forced me to look at history and made me actually fall in love with history, because it gave me answers and insights to understand why I'm going through what I'm going through.
And looking at like the capitalizing of hip hop and how like it kind of, like you were just saying, on one side of the coin, it kind of sold hip hop as an image. Like now it was kind of like really easy to categorize and pinpoint and capitalize on. But also there's, I think the other side of the coin is that because it became so amplified, the misogyny and the superficial aspects of it, and the violence in hip hop and the disrespect that it's also created negative stigmas on Black and brown people.
Absolutely.
Which was never, I don't think, ever the intention of hip hop.
No.
But do you think that was intentional of capitalism, or do you think
of
they
the
were
industry?
or do you think they were just trying to capitalize on it for profit?
Well, I think the people within the industry who are trying to capitalize on it. I don't know if I necessarily ascribe to it. Like, there's a meeting of human beings, or like, so now how are we gonna make, put down a certain group? Those discussions do happen, but at the level of organizing of it, I don't know, right? I think someone in the industry goes, "Oh, that's shocking. That's getting attention. Let's exploit that.
Yeah.
If that's what's selling, let's make sure that's what keeps selling. Strip it." And for instance, that changes in part NWA, right? NWA is gangster rap, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about, but they were street reporters, and they were speaking aggressively and and whatnot. What happened though is that sold. That was shocking. That was controversial. But once the industry saw that sold, they said, well, let's strip this message out of here. Let's just sell the skeleton, not the soul of what gangster rap brought. Let's just sell the skeleton of it.
Yeah.
Because it's profitable. And then you're right. That creates a certain perception of brown and Black folks, right? It doesn't create a new perception of Black and brown folks.
Mm-hmm.
Now it just becomes yet another tool that reinforces historically how mainstream America has viewed Black and brown folks, right? I mean, you could go back, you could take what people have said about brown and Black folk as a result of how they've been viewed through hip hop, and you'll see that in the 60s, you'll see that at the turn of the 20th century, you'll see throughout American history, there's been marginalization and dehumanization of brown and Black folks as less than, more easily giving into their emotions. In other words, they're less intelligent to be rational thinkers. That's America. Yeah. That is the history of race relations in this country. It's just in every generation, a new tool is utilized to continue to view brown and Black folks through that lens, right? So hip hop just became, and rap became just the new way that it reinforced in the minds of people that are already viewing brown and Black folks that way, a new, see, proof, told you, right? They're just violent, druggy, emotional, vulgar human beings. And so hip hop was just another thing to justify perceiving a group of people that way. If I can add one last thing about hip hop, mm-hmm. I think that the culture of hip hop also had a profound effect in that hip hop is a culture that embraces improvisation and creativity.
Yeah.
And I think I try to maintain that element in my teaching and in my being. Yeah, I know we said we're going to do it this way, but things took a detour. Let's be able to evolve with that. Let's be flexible and improvise with the situation that we have. I think I might be biased, but when I look at the hip hop generation who are now coming into adulthood and working in professional spaces, there's a way in which people that grew up on hip hop engage life than other people. There's a flexibility that I don't see a lot of other people have. The mere culture of hip hop is a culture of flexibility. The MC freestyle, the b-boy dance, and the DJ improvising with what's the crowd, what's going on. All right, cool, right? Every aspect of hip hop culture has this element of improvisation, and I believe that's influenced the way that the hip hop generation or the beat generation experiences life. Yeah, here's the structure, let's work through the structure. Oh, it's not quite working. Let's pivot, let's change, let's improvise on the spot. There's a level of improvisation that I think is cool.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So you said that hip hop is one of the things that led you to fall in love with history and then obviously become a professor. What are some other things? Just last question.
Well, what we've talked about, because we'll go back to the beginning, that there's growing up bicultural and having two not easily compatible cultures but both cultures laying claim to truth makes you say, well, who's right?
Right.
You go home, you have to be Afghan. You go to American culture, and they make fun of you for being Afghan, like your behaviors that aren't American, right? So all that teasing that may happen in those spaces, that teasing implicitly or subconsciously tells you you're not living right. That there's this way that I live is the right way. So there's always been this question of truth. What's the right culture? And so for me, there was always this internal tug of war between American and Afghan culture. Well, who's right? Is there right? Is there believing that there's one right?
Yeah.
And so who's right? That question, just like what happened to hip hop, is a question of history. I had to look back. Why did American culture develop the way it did? How did Afghan culture develop the way that it did? I had to go back into history to figure that out. And it's finding answers to those questions and searching for those answers that made me fall in love with history. So those are two critically important. And then probably the pivotal moment in my life that took the things that were making me look back and then really catalyzed that into like an action and career path was 9/11. All that internal tug of war that was taking place became an external tug of war. People, hey, what are you? Are you more Afghan? Are you more American? People wanting me to declare my identity for them to feel safe about their own identity made me go, whoa, what is going on? Why did those planes hit? Why is there beef between the East and the West? All of that again is questions of, hey, you got to know what happened back there, and it's experiencing that the at the most benign level, the questioning of my identity, and the most malignant kind of behavior of them actively attacking me for being Afghan-American. All of that said, man, I gotta learn about history, and then I gotta teach that history. I gotta help people find comfort in understanding identity, and along the way as I was learning about this stuff, then shifting that question, not simply finding comfort in their identity, but more importantly, how to engage in a process of constructing that identity. So hip hop being bicultural, and then the catalytic moment was then 9/11 and saying, okay, this has to be it. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Some form and fashion. I got to share, help people understand history, help understand how they can construct and create their own identities. So that's the short answer to that.
Sorry, I had a thought. It's gone.
Cool.
It's so late. Okay, anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
I swear I was going to ask another question, but I lost it.
Identity isn't real. The self is a fantasy.
Oh, that was my question. So when I took your class, I feel like now I feel a little bit naive and maybe even ignorant. I felt that all of the identity work that we did was specifically in response to, or like just part of the bigger social justice learning community that the class that I took was part of. And because the sister class of English was also predicated on identity, I just felt like it was something that you took the history of ethnic groups in the United States and then used identity as a lens to teach it through. But now I'm wondering if you were teaching it that way.
It's always about identity. So identity is always the lens by which I teach anything. And I would argue that's a trend in a lot of fields of study, and particularly actually history. There's a lot of history of identity things emerging, the history of consciousness, things like that. I thought I was doing something that was not something that other people were doing. And the more and more I looked around, I was like, oh snap! I'm not the only one asking questions of identity. And I think that's because where we are historically right now, the shifting from the industrial environment to the digital, technological, informational environment is causing us to, who we were doesn't quite fit where we're at.
Yeah.
And for many of us, that's causing us to question identity.
We have so many platforms to express our identity through, where before it was just your person.
Well,
and maybe you're like the way you expressed yourself creatively, but like your identity was something that you took with you everywhere, but now it's something that you get to like post on the internet.
There's absolutely all of that, right? But I think for folks who are in education, we lived in two worlds. We were born and bred to live in the industrial age, yet we find ourselves living and teaching in the technological, informational, digital age, right? So we have an identity crisis. All the symbols that we had that anchored our identity in the industrial world doesn't fit this new world. So we find ourselves trying to figure out who we are, right? Every institution that was shaped to serve the industrial reality, and we're finding discomfort because those institutions don't quite fit right in this world. So it's causing us to question, wait, we based our entire identity in symbols and all these things over here. These symbols and institutions don't fit here. And we find ourselves questioning ourselves. And I think it has to do with a lot with us questioning with who are we as a society, who are we individually. So there's this trend towards identity in history and other fields. But yeah, everything I do is rooted in identity. Doesn't matter what I'm teaching identity. Teaching civil rights, it's going to be about identity. If I'm teaching constitutional law, I'm using it as a means to understand identity. When I taught constitutional law, that's how I was trying to teach it. What was the identity of people that shaped the construction of the Constitution? And then how is the identity of people changing? And how can we then use the Constitution as a tool to make society fit the emerging identities, right? So it's everything I do is going to be through the lens of identity.
It's awesome, like the history of identity. Well, all history can be the history of identity.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
That when we come to questioning anything, why do we believe in this religion? Why do we believe in this culture? It's because it gives meaning to us. It gives us a sense of self and a connection to society. Well, that's all identity, right? And then helping people understand that these identities have changed and shift, and what's the forces that shift and change identities?
Yeah.
And what's the struggle in those moments? Is to help us understand. I think it comes from the kind of an existentialist philosophy that there's no inherent meaning in life except for the meaning that we construct. So how can we free ourselves from the prison of imposed identity and liberate ourselves into the construction of our shared identity? And that's fundamentally my goal when I teach, is shed the imposed identity to the extent that you feel like it needs shedding. Be able to question, right? Because when you don't and you operate unconsciously by the identity, the socially constructed imposed identity, then you're imprisoned by that identity. You are going to make decisions based on an identity you haven't questioned. Well, then you're functioning almost like a robot, right? So how do we come to understand?
What if we are robots?
Well, then I'd like to not have to do half the things humans do. Eat, go to the bathroom, sleep. Yeah.
Isn't there a movie about like
eat, sleep, shit? Is that what it is? No, it's Eat, Sleep, Pray.
Eat, Pray, Love.
Eat, Pray, Love.
No, but isn't there a movie that like it's about like people that don't realize that they're robots? or like they think they're human. Well, I know there's a show. It's called Westworld. You heard of Westworld?
Yeah, the HBO show. I've been wanting to watch it. I watched half of the first episode and fell asleep.
Oh.
That's why you should have watched things like 2 a.m. After a long work day.
That's how you know you're not a robot, because you needed to sleep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, anyway. Fuck. I keep distracting myself. Alright. Yeah. Thanks.
Alright. Done.
Alright. Fuck. It feels so late. What time is it?
5:45?
It's pretty late.
Bye.
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 Bye.